Get higher, baby. Get higher, baby. Get higher, girl. Hey.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Knights of the Pageless Library. We're a little podcast where we review audiobooks. I am Bo Knight,
And I am Ryan Knight.
and today we are crossing swords, where we look at two separate books. So me and Ryan both listen to two books separately, and we're going to talk about them together right now. So yeah, this is just like kind of broaden our scope a little bit, so we can look at more books to like separately but together at the same time. Like as a podcast, we can cover more things. So I listened to H.G. Wells's War of the Worlds, narrated by Simon Vance. And what did you listen to, Ryan?
I listened to Albion, The Legend of Arthur, written by Robert Valentine and narrated by a whole bunch of people.
And I want to get this out
Because
of the way before
mine,
we forget that these two books are included with your Prime. If you have uh, Audible Prime, like Audible Plus, you can listen to these two books for free.
right. And mine, the Albion book, is only from Audible. So it's like an Audible original type thing.
I think you can get mine from multiple places, but it is included with your membership if you have the membership. So
Right. So with that, if anybody likes the Crossing Swords idea, if they hate the Crossing Swords idea, however you feel about it, feel free to email us kotpl.pod@gmail.com and let us know how you guys feel about that.
yeah, if you guys hate it, let us know. Because I actually kind of like it. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how this one goes, but it basically, we were just kind of talking before we hit record. It basically, though, instead of one book a week, now you're getting two, essentially. So,
Yeah, you're becoming quite the network. So, do you want to talk about your book a little bit first?
Sure. So, Albion, The Legend of Arthur, is a pretty new book, just came out this year. Both, I guess it's only on Audible. It's an Audible dramatization. So I'll get that out of the way right now.
So it's not an actual book, too.
No, this is the whole entity right here. There is no Albion book, is what I'm seeing. So that makes this a little bit unique in that way, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess Aliens was the same way, that it was like a script, I guess.
True. Yeah, that's true. um, so this book right now, if you were to buy it on Audible, would cost you $22 roughly. And you would get about 6.5 hours of listening time for that price. So,
That's kind of steep.
yeah, I'll get into it a little bit more
Yeah,
here in
so
a little bit.
you know more than I do.
So, what about yours?
So H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. It's kind of old. I mean, obviously, it originally, when was it written? It was written in 1898,
Dang.
and the audiobook version that I listened to came out in 2009. But there are many different versions. There are a couple dramatizations, it looks like, and I'm pretty sure if you just look it up, you can find it on YouTube. But I listened to it through Audible, obviously. And if you wanted to buy it right now, you could buy it for $19.95. And it's only 5 hours and 55 minutes long. I mean, I feel like that's, I guess I'm gonna do it more when I give my recommendations, but that's kind of a steep price. I wasn't really expecting it to be that much.
Sure. Yeah, that I mean, and I feel the same about mine. Those prices are a bit steep for the right around that 6 hour mark. That seems a bit steep. And I mean, I understand like the one I listened to is a dramatization, so you got a lot of people involved, but still it's kind of a steep price.
So do you want to get into like how it's narrated, I guess, a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, mine's pretty simple. Like I said, it's a dramatization. So you're for anybody who doesn't know, a dramatization is basically like if you were listening to a movie in the background, essentially. It has sound effects, it has people talking to each other. And the way they kind of make this a little bit easier for the listener to understand what's going on is they try to name drop a lot while they're talking back and forth. That's the only way you can really, unless the voices are very distinctly different, that's the only way you really know who is talking at any given point.
So does it ever get like kind of muddy? Like
In this
yeah.
in this one, absolutely.
Okay.
I will just say that now. The narration, this one's kind of tough because the acting is actually pretty decent, to be honest. Like a lot of
Okay.
the people who are doing the narration are decent. I just think that the way it's written, the added sound effects and stuff like that are pretty poor in this one.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. So I mean, I didn't realize yours was a dramatization until like today.
I didn't either until I started listening to it.
Which I guess we both took like way different. Because I kind of listened to like a classic book, just because it was narrated just by Simon Vance. It's him the whole way through,
Sure.
and it's pretty easy to follow. I think he does a fantastic job. I mean, he also does like the Dune books too, and he actually does a ton of
Really?
books. He does The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. He's in that as well.
Oh, okay.
So
It's funny you
he
mentioned Dune. That's interesting. So how is he? Let's hear that.
I think he does a very good job. I mean, he's kind of he does the character that he's playing very, very well, I think, because this whole book is basically like a journal that this guy is writing, and
Okay.
it's like set in the 1800s, kind of like Victorian times, and like the way that he speaks is, I think he does a very good job of being like kind of like a proper Englishman would have been back in those days, and the way he talks about things is very, I think he does a really good job. Let's just put it at that, like leave it at that.
Okay. Right on. That's good. That's good to know. And then that's also good to know that he does some of the Dune books because I'm very interested in those.
Me too.
So what do you think on yours? What do you think as far as, is it easy to listen to, easy to follow?
I don't. It's not hard listening. Like I've definitely listened to much harder things, but I find myself, if I was doing like a kind of a complicated task, I would definitely kind of lose track of what was happening.
Sure.
And I think kind of being a little bit familiar with some of the movies of this kind of helped. Like I knew kind of where the story was going. I mean,
Oh yeah.
it's not like a super complicated story, but it is old timey written. So there are a lot of words that you don't hear in normal, like everyday speech.
Okay.
And there were a lot of times I had to stop and like look up a word because I wasn't sure what it meant.
Oh wow.
But
Okay.
I do like those opportunities to like make my vocabulary bigger. So I feel like it's kind of a good thing.
Nice.
So it sounds like your book was hard to follow.
See, I would say the overarching story of this is not hard to follow. But again, same thing. I had the same problem. If I found myself doing even some menial tasks, I found myself being like, who is this person? Who is talking right now? So I feel like that was one spot that this one really was difficult for me. And dramatizations are hard in my opinion. Like it takes a lot to pull these off correctly. And this one just wasn't that for me. Like I said, the overarching story, pretty simplistic. And I think this is supposed to be a more accurate representation. So of like the historical figure of Arthur.
Wait,
versus
Arthur
like,
was a real person?
well, whether or not he was, this would be a more historically accurate one.
Oh,
This is
okay. So
not
they're not like slinging spells and dragons and Merlin and all that?
So that's the weird part. I'll get into it a little bit after we pass the spoiler wall. Some of that is in here, but it's not to the point that it like caught my interest. I'll say it that way.
Interesting.
Yeah. So with that, what do you think recommendation on your book was? War of the Worlds, the version you listened to, because I was just scrolling through and I realized there is a bunch of them.
Yeah, didn't I say that?
Yeah, but I just am curious, the one you listened to, what do you think about it?
I liked it. I liked it
Okay.
a lot more than Time Machine, and I
Oh,
feel like
really?
this is a sci-fi classic for a reason, because it's good.
Right on. Well, that's good to know. Yeah.
And hang on, before I don't want to cut you off, but I felt like you were going to talk. I like seeing where a lot of these like tropes I think in sci-fi come from, like the tripod and like all of that stuff. It's really interesting to see like where it took its roots. And that's one
Sure.
of the things I really appreciate about Starship Troopers. It's like you get to see where all this stuff comes from and like where it all draws from.
Yeah, definitely.
And I feel like that's kind of important to like go back and like look at where all this stuff comes from. And I guess that's why I probably really appreciated this a lot, because I think a lot of modern sci-fi owes a lot to this.
Yeah, and you're probably absolutely right. I mean, that's sort of like with any modern day like fantasy setting, and then not going back and like looking at some of like the Lord of the Rings or Tolkien's work. Like
Right. And
just
I
doing
think we
yourself a
brought that up too.
disservice. Yeah. Right on.
So what about your book? Do I want to
Um
go check out Albion or what?
no. I'm not even gonna sugarcoat this one, man. I struggled through this. It this
Interesting.
one this book sucked, dude.
Okay, jeez.
I'm sorry. It was
So
I'm
like,
not
what do you think it was, like the story itself, or did like the dramatization take away too much? Like, did it make the story too hard to follow because it was a dramatization? Like, what do you think?
that actually could be. It could be the way that they did the dramatization just wasn't very good. Like I said, the actors were fine, but the way that it was done just was kind of hard to listen to and made it very difficult to follow. And I mean, this is obviously all my opinion, but this could have benefited from being just a standard, uh, audio book. But, and the overarching story, if I'm honest here, was pretty lame. Like it kind of was. Like I said, it's a more like historically accurate representation of like what King Arthur would have been going through, and this all takes place before he would have been king. It's like sort of his how he became king. Um,
What, he pulled a sword from a stone.
well, according to this book, I'll talk about it after we pass the spoilers, but I'm just gonna straight up say it. Definitely don't pay for this book. Don't waste a token on this book. If I guess if you have Prime already and you are super interested in the story of like King Arthur, maybe, but I I did not really like this one at all.
Hmm. Well, that's a shame.
It kind of was, but that's okay. I mean, that's why we're doing this podcast is we'll sort out some of these things so you guys don't have to.
Yeah. So if you listen to this episode, you can listen to one pretty good book, or if you want to listen to War of the Worlds, I think, or you can listen to a bad book too if you're in the mood.
Yeah. Yeah, so with that, I think we go ahead and just pass the spoiler wall real quick. I won't have a lot to say about mine, so most of it might be on you. But
I mean, I don't. It depends on how much you want to go into.
I mean, give me I've seen the movie. I've seen the newer movie.
Yeah,
So,
and the newer
okay,
movie compared to this book sucks, in my opinion.
really? Okay, that was going to be my question. Is the newer movie an accurate representation of the
N-
book?
No, and because what the movie gets so wrong is that it's very important of what time frame this is in, which is like in the 1800s, because there's not a lot of communication between people. Like you can't, because in the very beginning when the the Martians start coming, they like fall out of the sky and like these pillars that land, but since they're not used to Earth's gravity, like they move really slowly, so like it takes them like an hour to unscrew this thing to
Oh,
like come out of it. Yeah, before they're able to get into their tripod thing. But they didn't know what's happening, so they just like watch them do this. And but like as they slowly start to learn, they're like, oh, well, we can't like let them just come out. And they actually like fight back in the book and actually like take out some of the tripods, and it's kind of cool. They're not like immortal like they are in the movie.
right. Yeah, because in the movie they have like shields that they
Yeah,
can't do anything about. Yeah, okay.
and there's a really cool scene where the tripods are like moving on this city, and the main guy's trying to cross a river, and one of the tripods gets hit in the leg and like fall, and like it like knocks the pilot out of it, and it like starts stumbling around like without a pilot in it, and it just starts like knocking shit over, and the other tripods have to come in and like corral it and like carry it away.
Really?
Like
Okay.
yeah, like they're yeah, it this book is a lot more about like the aliens didn't really necessarily know either what they were getting themselves into.
Yeah, because in the movie, the newer one, I haven't seen the older one, but in the newer one, um, it's like they had been studying us forever and they
Yeah.
knew exactly what to do when they got here.
And that's not really the case in the book.
Interesting. That see, and that like what you're saying, that sounds like much more of an interesting story to
I
me.
feel like you would like this.
Okay. Yeah, because I didn't like in the movie either how they were like, ooh, they already had the tripods built underground and ready to
Yeah.
go, and they, and they're the perfect human annihilation machine type thing. I was like, well, that's lame. Like,
And the reason they come to the book in Earth is because the Martians are so advanced that they don't eat. The way that they like feed is they just take blood from other stuff and inject it just straight into themselves.
oh god.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's pretty hardcore.
Yeah, that's
And there
interesting.
is a scene where this guy gets taken like he's hanging out in a basement with this other guy who's a kind of a dickhead. But the guy gets taken away from him, and like he sees the monsters feed, like the aliens feeding on him. It's horrifying.
Huh. Okay.
So I feel like I've been talking a lot. You want to talk about yours?
No, it's all good. I was genuinely interested in yours because it sounds much more interesting than mine was.
And
um,
I mean, the too long didn't read of this book, if you've only ever seen the movie, is I think in my opinion, the movie gets wrong about the original story. Is like the setting isn't right. There isn't as much destruction as that. I mean, there is a lot, but this book also deals a lot with like just like humans fleeing an area and like all the pandemonium that causes.
sure.
Which the movie does touch on a little bit, but like one of the parts he's talking about all these people fleeing from like southern London, and it was like the most people that have ever moved through that area because there was
Oh wow.
just so many people, and like people are getting trampled, and there's it's kind of heartbreaking. And this book also deals a lot with too, it has to do with the time period of like how people are dressed, and like
Mhm.
how that kind of makes him think about these people because he's a psychologist, so he's kind of like always psychoanalyzing people.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That is an interesting thing for him to have touched on though back in the 1800s
Yeah.
when the population was probably far lower than it is even today. So that's cool. Um okay, so
Yeah, tell me about King Arthur.
well so he's not the king in the beginning of this story. So from what I was able to gather, and I'll probably butcher this, but like the TLDR of this is that you had the Britons, right? This was before they were the Britons, though. This was back in like the 490 AD, right there, right there in there.
Okay.
So this was when the Britons were only like tribes of people instead of like a unified country.
Okay.
And it's basically a serious Game of Thrones situation where you got one guy who they
Wait,
all
this sounds
consider the
cool.
leader. Just hear me out. You got one guy who they all consider kind of the leader, right? But then you have all these separate little groups of people who follow
Okay.
him. And then you get all these,
His
the groups.
vassals.
Sure, but the groups, they might not agree. They might be like liberals and conservatives, some of them. So even though they all think this guy is their leader, they don't agree with each other, right? So you got a lot of infighting bullshit going on.
Okay.
So in the beginning of this, you got Arthur's uncle. He is considered the king right now, okay, of the Britons. And then you got them, they're fighting with the Saxons all the time, right? The Saxons are basically like basically got, like I said, left wing and right wing. They're all the same people, but they're all just fighting with each other. So his uncle tells Arthur that if he dies, he wants Arthur to take his place as king because Arthur's like their best fighter. Well, Arthur's cousin, the king's real son, doesn't like that.
Well, yeah,
Obviously.
because that's not how succession works.
Right. He don't like that. So most of this movie is like
Movie.
they're sorry. That's what it felt like to me. Sorry, it's like watching a movie. Most of this story is his cousin plotting against Arthur, how to take Arthur out, but so he can't take over as king, basically.
So, as a dramatization, like, how are the background sounds in this?
Pretty bad,
Okay.
actually. That is a part of what makes it not great. So you got like a lot of fighting scenes, right? You got a lot of
Okay.
battle scenes.
So, like,
That's
swords tinging and stuff.
Yeah, and that's fine. The only problem is you're telling me in words it's a huge battle. You're putting in sounds. This sounds like it's about 8 guys in a room with some fake swords swinging them. That's so that was a huge that was very disheartening for me because I was like, oh man, like you told me there's this huge battle about to happen, but I'm not feeling it. It doesn't feel like a big battle. Um, and then so you do have Merlin in this. I put that in quotes because his name in this I'm pretty sure is Merthin,
What?
Merthin. Yeah, so and Arthur's name in this, because only ever heard Arthur as Arthur Pendragon, right?
Yeah.
That's his last name. Well, in this they call him Arthur Pendrake. So
What?
I don't know, and maybe I just don't know enough about the true history of like the King Arthur mythos, but it threw me off a lot. They're talking about Merthin a lot, and I was like, oh man, this is triggering me so bad. Like I was having a hard time hearing it said that way. But I don't know, maybe the original story or the original mythos, that's how it's said. I don't know that. Um, and he's in this, he's not really a wizard. He's pretty much an insane person.
What?
So, but he kind of like divines the future, I guess.
Okay.
And he knows that Arthur has to rise to become the king. Otherwise, if he doesn't, it's gonna fall into chaos. Um, but he literally acts insane because that was the only way, like, to keep them from locking him up, essentially. And I
Wait,
was just
what?
like, yeah, it was pretty weird, man.
Wait, acting crazy keeps you from getting locked up?
Well, apparently at this time they were just like, "Oh, this dude's crazy. Get him out of here." You know what I mean? Stuff like
Okay.
that. Instead of being like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, this guy is a heretic and he's plotting against the king. We got to lock him up." Basically.
Okay. Fair enough.
So, and then there's some other side stories. They like kill this one girl. Cuz she is pissed off at her father and she's trying to start a rebellion, and her father is loyal to the current king. So she tries to start a rebellion, so they freaking throw her off a cliff, but she doesn't die. And she goes
What?
to this island, and apparently
Okay.
on this island there's some sort of like, I don't even know what it was called. It was called something. It was some weird like creature basically lived on this island.
Wait, I thought
And
you said this wasn't magic.
that's just the thing though. There's not really any magic. That was the weird part. There's like this weird creature on this island, and this girl ends up killing this creature and like taking this freaking old king sword. I'm telling you, dude, it was so like to the point where I was just like, man, you literally, it's like old world freaking word salad. Like you're just throwing all these
Interesting.
words in there, but they really have a whole lot of like emphasis in this book.
Hmm.
Basically at the end too, like there's several times where everybody thought Arthur died, but then Arthur didn't really die. Like it happened several times, and I was just like, man. And another reason I thought a lot about Game of Thrones is because constantly people are like, "Yes, Arthur, I will follow you." And then the next page he's like, "Okay, this is how we're going to kill Arthur." I'm like, "What what is happening?" Like
I'm your man. All right, let's murder him.
yeah, there was so much freaking just like backstabbing and betrayal that it almost got old. I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is almost just annoying."
Like there was actually no loyalty at all.
Yeah. Well, okay, so here, this is the last thing I'll say, and then I'll just quit because yeah. The girl they tried to kill, right? They threw her off the cliff. She was like Arthur's first love when he was young.
Okay.
So he He was on board though with them killing her because he was like, nah, this chick's crazy and she's trying to rebel against the current king. We got to get rid of her. So once she survives, she swears, that she's gonna get back at Arthur and she's gonna kill him. Well, she raises this army in rebellion with her, and they fight their way back to Arthur, and then she joins Arthur. I was like,
What?
exactly. I was
What?
like, yeah, that's what I mean, dude. That is what I was doing the whole time. I was just like,
I don't even know what to say. I'm like thinking. I'm like, what?
this is why it wasn't that good, man. It really wasn't very good. The story was just,
Well, to be fair, you picked it.
I did pick it, and I'm just throwing my opinion out there after I put the time in. I listened to the whole thing. I can't say that I didn't. So
I really hope somebody's like, actually, Albion's the best story.
it's actually a perfect representation of King Arthur and his mythos.
Yeah. You just didn't get it, you freaking neckbeard.
Please do. Please, if I got this wrong for any reason, please let me know. We'd love to hear that.
Yeah.
I just didn't like this one. I really didn't. So
And I think that is totally fair. To me as a person, like I know I didn't listen to this book. You got to do a lot for a dramatization to be
exactly.
pretty good.
And I think, again, I'm not even faulting the actors and actresses. I don't think that they were the problem here. I just think that the overall, the pacing, the way the story was told, and it playing out as a dramatization, I feel like it just didn't work out that well.
So, but you also think it wouldn't have fixed it if it was just a regular story?
I mean, it might have been a little bit better if it was a regular story, but I still think it would have suffered in the end because, like I said, it almost was so much like backstabbing and just weird. There was so many twists that by the end of it, I was like, we're going in the completely opposite direction of, but not in an interesting way. So,
Okay.
yeah, I won't beat this one up anymore.
And I think I'm good talking about War of the Worlds.
Okay. So with that, what are we going to do next time, Bo?
So the next book we're going to be looking at Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. So hyped.
So, yeah, hype train's rolling, man. So,
But I think our next episode that will come out will be our new series on Samurai Shampoo for Anime Squires.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're gonna try. We're already probably not doing very good. We're gonna try to be putting those out about once a week.
We can still make it.
Squires. We're gonna be doing our damnedest, we should say.
We can still make it.
But what is it? We could sure as Abraham try.
Yeah, we can sure as Abraham try.
So with that, again, if anybody has anything they want to tell us, please email us kotpl.pod@gmail.com. You guys could check us out over on YouTube at Knights of the Pageless Library. You can, like, comment, subscribe, all the cool things over there. Leave comments over there. That helps out too. I usually see those very quickly. So
yeah.
And again, thank you, anyone and everyone, for listening. We appreciate it.
Yeah, we really appreciate you taking your time to listen to two brothers talk about audiobooks.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, hope to catch you guys in the next one.